She
Ride
stopped
with me.
breathing. Face down in the snow, blood freezing at her temple, one leg gone below the knee. A German shepherd threw his body over hers, howling into the blizzard, a sound that could shatter heaven. Garrett Stone killed his motorcycle and ran. He dropped to his knees, fingers searching for a pulse. Found it. Barely. The dog bared his teeth, growling, but his eyes were begging, "Save her. Please, I can't lose her." The woman's eyes fluttered open. Terror flooded her face. "No, please, he sent you." Garrett pulled her against his chest. "I don't know who's hunting you, but tonight ride with me." Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. And if this story moves you, hit subscribe so you never miss another tale of courage, loyalty, and heart. Your support means everything. Now let's continue. Garrett Stone dropped to his knees beside the woman's body and pressed 2 fingers to her throat. Pulse. Weak. Thready. But there. "Stay with me," he said, his voice cutting through the wind. "You hear me? You stay with me." The German shepherd whined, but didn't move from his position over her back. Garrett could see now the dog was injured too. A long gash across his ribs, partially healed, but reopened from cold and movement. This animal had been protecting her for hours, maybe longer. Garrett stripped off his leather jacket and wrapped it around the woman's shoulders. Her skin was ice. Hypothermia had already set in deep. If he didn't get her warm in the next 20 minutes, she wouldn't see morning. "I'm going to lift her," he told the dog, meeting those amber eyes directly. "You understand I'm trying to help." The German shepherd studied him for a long moment. Then slowly he moved aside. Garrett gathered her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, too thin, too fragile, too broken. As he lifted her, her eyes fluttered open. Gray-green, clouded with fear and fever. She screamed. "No, no, please, he sent you, didn't he? He found me." Her fists struck his chest weakly, desperately. Garrett held her firm but gentle, the way he'd held wounded civilians in a dozen war zones. "I don't know who he is," Garrett said, his voice steady as stone. "But I'm not leaving you here to die. You understand me? Whatever you're running from, it's not me." She stared at him, chest-heaving, searching his face for the lie. She didn't find it. "The dog," she whispered. "Please, don't leave Shadow. Nobody gets left behind." Garrett's motorcycle couldn't carry 3. He'd known that the moment he saw her. But 2 miles back, he'd passed an abandoned hunting cabin roof, intact chimney, still standing. It wasn't much, but it would keep them alive until the storm passed. He carried her through the blizzard, while Shadow limped beside them, refusing to fall behind, despite his wound. Every few steps, the dog looked up at Garrett, as if checking, making sure this stranger was still worthy of trust. The cabin door gave way on the 3rd kick. Inside was dark, frozen, but sheltered from the wind. Garrett found dry wood stacked beside an old fireplace. Within minutes, flames crackled to life. He laid the woman on a dusty cot near the fire and began assessing the damage. Frostbite on 3 fingers, mild on her remaining foot. The prosthetic leg below her left knee was military-grade, expensive, durable, but the socket had cracked from cold. She wouldn't be walking on it anytime soon. "What's your name?" he asked, wrapping her hands in strips torn from his flannel shirt. She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the door, waiting for it to burst open. "I need to know what I'm dealing with here." Garrett's voice was calm but firm. "Who's chasing you, police criminal ex-husband?" Her whole body flinched at the last word. Garrett nodded slowly. "Ex-husband. He's law enforcement, isn't he?" Her eyes finally met his. "How did you know?" Because you're not running like someone who broke the law. You're running like someone the law can't help. He finished wrapping her hands and sat back. I've seen it before, more times than I want to remember. She was quiet for a long moment. Then softly, Lena. My name is Lena Marsh. Garrett Stone. You're military. Navy SEAL. 12 years. Something shifted in her expression. Not trust, not yet, but recognition. One soldier seeing another. Army, she said. Combat medic, 4 years. Until? She gestured toward her missing leg. Afghanistan. Kandahar, IED. I saved 3 men from that convoy. A bitter laugh escaped her cracked lips. Came home a hero. Married a monster. Shadow had positioned himself between Lena and the door, his ears rotating at every sound outside. Garrett recognized the behavior. This was a trained protection dog, not a pet. Military or police, K9, judging by his discipline. The dog, Garrett said. He was your husband's. Lena's hand moved to Shadow's head, stroking the thick fur between his ears. Derek's K9 partner. Best tracking dog in Lincoln County. They worked together for 6 years. Her voice hardened. Until Shadow saw what Derek really was. What happened? Derek hit me. Hard. Knocked me down the stairs. Lena's eyes stayed fixed on the fire. Shadow attacked him, bit through his forearm to the bone. Derek stabbed him, reported him as killed in the line of duty, told everyone the dog had to be put down because he'd gone vicious. Garrett looked at the scar across Shadow's ribs. Not a knife wound. A hunting knife. Deep, deliberate, meant to kill. But you saved him. I took him and ran. 3 months ago. Lena's jaw tightened. Derek's been hunting us ever since. Sheriff of Lincoln County, you said. Sheriff, judge's golf buddy, church deacon. Everyone loves him. The bitterness in her voice could have frozen the fire. He told the whole county I'm mentally unstable, that I stopped taking my medication, that I'm dangerous and armed. There's a $10,000 reward for information about where I am. Garrett processed this silently. A corrupt sheriff, a victim no one would believe. A wounded woman with nowhere to go and a dead man's target on her back. He'd spent a year overseas saving strangers from monsters. One had followed him home. Why didn't you go to the FBI? Garrett asked. State police, anyone outside his jurisdiction? Lena laughed a broken sound. You think I didn't try? I went to the state police 3 times. First 2 times they sent me back to Derek's office for local processing. The 3rd time an officer actually listened, took my statement, promised to investigate. She paused. He was dead 2 weeks later. Car accident, single vehicle. No witnesses. Your husband killed him. Derek killed him, and everyone knows it. But no one can prove it, and no one wants to be next. Garrett stood and walked to the window, checking the darkness outside. The storm still raged, but that wouldn't stop a determined hunter. You walked through a blizzard on 1 leg, he said quietly. How long? Since yesterday morning. I was staying at a shelter 2 towns over. Derek found it. I barely got out before... Her voice broke. I just started walking. I didn't know where else to go. 20 hours. She'd walked for 20 hours through a Montana winter, on a damaged prosthetic with a wounded dog with no food, no shelter, no hope. And she hadn't quit. Garrett turned back to face her. You said he'd kill you if he found you. No. Lena's voice dropped so low he barely heard it. He said he'd make me disappear. He said there were buyers who wanted someone like me. Someone broken. Someone who wouldn't be missed. The words hung in the air like poison. Garrett's hands clenched into fists. For 12 years, he'd fought human trafficking overseas. He'd pulled women from shipping containers, from basements, from cages. He'd seen what buyers did to their purchases. And this monster was operating in America, wearing a badge, protected by the very system meant to stop him. "How many others?" Garrett asked, his voice dangerously calm. "I don't know. 3 women disappeared from the domestic violence shelter last year. Derek investigated personally. No leads. Cases closed." Lena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I think he's been doing this for years, and I'm the only one who knows." Headlights cut through the storm. Shadow's growl came first, low, deadly, a warning from deep in his chest. Garrett was at the window, instantly hand moving to the weapon he always carried. A police SUV, moving slowly, spotlight sweeping the roadside. "He found us," Lena breathed. She tried to stand, failed, fell back onto the cot. "Oh God, he found us. Quiet." Garrett killed the fire with handfuls of snow, plunging the cabin into darkness. "Stay low. Don't move." The spotlight swept past the cabin windows. Once. Twice. Garrett pressed himself against the wall, controlling his breathing, becoming invisible the way only years of combat could teach. The SUV stopped. A door opened. Footsteps crunched through snow approaching the cabin. Shadow's body coiled like a spring ready to attack. Garrett silently commanded him with a hand signal. "Wait." The dog obeyed, instantly recognizing authority. The footsteps reached the cabin door. A pause. Then knock, knock, knock. "Anyone in there?" A man's voice. Friendly, professional, wrong. "County Sheriff's Department. We're doing wellness checks on account of the storm. Anyone need assistance?" Lena's hand covered her mouth to stop the sob. Garrett didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't exist. Another pause. Then the footsteps retreated, crunching back toward the SUV. The door opened. Closed. The engine revved. The headlights moved on, disappearing into the blizzard. Garrett waited a full 5 minutes before speaking. "He's not gone. He's circling, checking every structure on this road." "Then we're trapped." "No." Garrett pulled out his phone, checking the signal. Weak, but present. "I have a place. My father's cabin about 8 miles north. It's off the grid, no records, no address, nothing that could connect it to me. If we can reach it before sunrise, we disappear." 8 miles? I can't walk 8 miles. I can barely stand." Garrett met her eyes. "You won't have to walk. I'm carrying you." "That's impossible. In this storm I carried a wounded Marine 9 miles through Taliban territory with a bullet in my shoulder. 8 miles through snow is a vacation." He wasn't boasting. He was stating facts. "The question is, do you trust me enough to let me try?" Lena looked at him for a long moment. This stranger who'd appeared from the storm, who'd asked nothing, who'd demanded nothing, who looked at her broken body and saw something worth saving. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you risk your life for someone you don't know?" Garrett was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something she couldn't name. "Because last year I spent 12 months pulling women out of trafficking dens overseas. I saw what men like your husband do to people, and every time I saved one of them, I told myself it mattered, that I was making a difference." He looked at her directly. "But the whole time, the same thing was happening here, in my own country, and I didn't see it. I didn't stop it." He extended his hand. "So maybe you're not the one who needs saving tonight. Maybe I am." Lena took his hand. The journey through the storm was brutal. Garrett carried Lena on his back while Shadow broke trail ahead, his injured body pushing through drifts that reached his chest. The wind screamed around them, trying to tear them apart, to bury them, to erase them from the world. But Garrett had survived worse. He'd survived Fallujah, survived the mountains of Afghanistan, survived the black sites no one talked about, and the missions that officially never happened. A Montana blizzard was nothing compared to the storms inside his own head. "Talk to me," he said over his shoulder. "Stay awake. Tell me something. What do you want to know? How'd you meet him, your husband?" Lena's arms tightened around his neck. "At the VA hospital. I was in rehab, learning to walk again. He came in to visit a deputy who'd been shot. He saw me struggling with the parallel bars, and he just started helping. Every day. Brought me flowers. Told me I was beautiful. Told me my leg didn't matter. And you believed him?" I wanted to believe him. I'd lost everything, my career, my independence, my sense of who I was. And here was this man who looked at me like I was whole. Her voice cracked. I didn't realize he was looking at me like I was prey. Garrett said nothing. He just kept walking. The first year was perfect. Everyone said so. The sheriff and his hero wife. We were the county's golden couple. He bought me a house, bought me a new prosthetic, took care of everything. When did it change? Slowly. So slowly I didn't see it until it was too late. He started checking my phone, wanted to know where I was every minute, said it was because he loved me because he worried. Then he started criticizing my cooking, my clothes, my friends, said I was too dependent, too needy, too damaged. She paused, gathering strength for the next part. The first time he hit me, I told myself it was an accident. He apologized, cried, bought me jewelry. The second time I made excuses. The third time, I tried to leave. What happened? He broke my prosthetic, snapped it in half with his bare hands, stood over me while I crawled across the floor and said, "Where are you going to go? Who's going to want you? You're nothing without me." Garrett's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. "I believed him," Lena whispered. "For 2 more years I believed him. Until Shadow." They reached the cabin as the first gray light touched the eastern sky. It was exactly as Garrett remembered, small, solid, hidden in a grove of pines that made it invisible from the road. His father had built it 40 years ago as a hunting retreat. After his death, it had sat empty, waiting. Garrett kicked through the snow, blocking the door, and carried Lena inside. The cabin was freezing, but intact. He set her on the old couch and immediately went to work, fire in the wood stove blankets from the closet, water from the hand pump in the kitchen. Shadow collapsed by the fire, his exhausted body finally giving in to warmth and safety. "You're safe here," Garrett said, handing Lena a cup of hot water. "No one knows about this place. My father paid cash, never registered. It never told anyone. As far as the world knows, it doesn't exist. Nothing lasts forever." "No, but we don't need forever. We just need long enough to figure out what comes next." Lena sipped the watercolor, slowly returning to her cheeks. "What does come next, I can't run forever. He'll never stop hunting me. And even if I could get someone to listen, even if I could prove what he's doing, he'd kill me before I could testify." "Then we don't let him. How you're one man. He's got the entire county in his pocket." Garrett sat down across from her firelight, playing across the hard planes of his face. "I spent 12 years doing the impossible, extracting hostages from fortified compounds, eliminating targets in countries where we officially didn't exist, taking down networks that governments swore couldn't be touched." His eyes met hers. "One corrupt sheriff in Montana. That's not impossible. That's Tuesday." For the first time since he'd found her, Lena almost smiled. "You really believe that I believe that men like Derek Marsh count on their victims being alone, being afraid, being too broken to fight back. He leaned forward. But you're not alone anymore. And I don't break. 3 days passed. Lena's frostbite began to heal. Her strength slowly returned. Garrett repaired her prosthetic with materials from his father's workshop. Not perfect, but functional. They talked. For hours, they talked. Garrett told her about his divorce, about coming home from his first deployment to find his wife gone. No note, no warning, just an empty house and a voicemail saying she'd found someone who would actually be there. Her name was Megan, he said, staring into the fire. We'd been together since high school. Married at 23. I thought love was enough to survive anything. It wasn't. Love doesn't keep you warm when your husband's on the other side of the world. It doesn't fix the leaky roof or hold you when you're scared or answer when you call at 2 a.m. He shook his head. I don't blame her for leaving. I blame myself for thinking I could have both the mission and the life. Do you still love her? The question hung in the air. I love who she was, who we were together. He paused. But she's not that person anymore. And neither am I. Lena was quiet for a moment. Then Derek told me no one would ever love me. That I was used up, worthless. That he was the only one who could stand to look at me. Derek's a liar and a coward who tears people down to feel powerful. I know that now. But for 3 years I believed every word. She looked at her hands still wrapped in bandages. How do you unlearn something that was beaten into you, one day at a time, one truth at a time? Garrett's voice softened. You're not worthless. You're not used up. You walked through hell and didn't quit. That's not damaged, that's the strongest thing I've ever seen. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, fragile, unnamed, terrifying in its possibility. Shadow lifted his head, watching them with knowing eyes. On the 4th morning, Claire Stone arrived. Garrett's younger sister was 32, sharp-eyed, and drove a truck loaded with veterinary supplies. She'd gotten his message 3 days ago and come immediately. What the hell have you gotten yourself into now? She demanded, stomping snow off her boots as she entered the cabin. Nice to see you too. Don't give me that. Claire's eyes swept the room, taking in Lena on the couch. Shadow by the fire, the general air of crisis. 3 years of silence and you call me out of nowhere saying you need medical supplies, no questions asked. Who's hurt? The dog, and... Garrett hesitated. It's complicated. It always is with you. Claire approached Shadow carefully, letting him sniff her hand before kneeling to examine his wound. Her expression darkened as she studied the scar. This isn't an accident. This is deliberate. Someone tried to kill this dog. His owner, Lena said quietly from the couch. Claire looked up. For the first time, she really looked at Lena, the missing leg, the healing frostbite, the hollow eyes of someone who'd been hunted. Who are you? Lena Marsh. She's under my protection, Garrett cut in. That's all you need to know right now. Claire stood slowly. Derek Marsh, the sheriff over in Lincoln County. That's her husband. Ex-husband, Lena said. How did you... I'm a vet. I've treated animals from every county in this region. Lincoln County sends me dogs with training injuries that look a lot like abuse. And there've been rumors about the sheriff for years, nothing anyone could prove, but... Claire's jaw tightened. Nobody was brave enough to dig deeper. She has evidence, Garrett said. Or she will once we figure out how to get it. Claire looked between her brother and the broken woman on his couch. Something shifted in her expression. Concern becoming resolve. Tell me everything. The full story took 2 hours. By the end, Claire was pacing the cabin like a caged animal, fury radiating from every step. Human trafficking. He's running a human trafficking operation under a sheriff's badge, and nobody's done anything. Nobody believes it, Lena said. Or they're too afraid to act. The FBI won't move without concrete evidence, and anyone who tries to gather evidence ends up dead. Claire stopped pacing. So what's the plan? We make him expose himself, Garrett said. Lena agrees to meet him. Wears a wire. Gets him to confess on tape. That's insane. He'll kill her the moment he gets her alone. He won't be alone with her. I'll be there. Close enough to intervene, far enough to stay hidden. And if something goes wrong, it won't. Garrett, Claire grabbed his arm. This isn't a military operation. You don't have a team. You don't have backup. You're one man against a corrupt sheriff with unlimited resources and zero conscience. I've faced worse odds. And you've come home broken every time, Claire's voice cracked. I've watched you disappear into yourself for 12 years. Every deployment takes more out of you than the last. And now you want to throw yourself into another war. Garrett pulled away gently. This isn't a war. It's a rescue. And I don't know how to walk away from someone who needs help. I never have. Even if it kills you. The question hung in the air. Lena spoke quietly. He's right that I can't run forever. Derek will find me eventually, maybe in a month, maybe in a year, but he'll find me. And when he does, he won't just kill me. He'll make me wish I'd died in that blizzard. She looked at Claire directly. Your brother gave me something I haven't had in years. Hope. The belief that maybe I don't have to accept this as my fate. If there's even a chance to stop Derek, to save the women he's going to destroy, I have to take it. Even if it costs me everything. And Claire was silent for a long moment. Then she sat down heavily in a chair. There's a deputy, she said slowly. Miguel Torres. He came to me last year with a dog Derek had retired. The dog had been beaten nearly to death. Miguel was crying. He said he knew what Derek was, but he couldn't prove it, couldn't stop it. He asked me if I knew anyone who could help. Garrett leaned forward. Is he trustworthy? He's the only honest cop in Lincoln County. That's why Derek keeps him close, easier to watch. But if there's anyone on the inside who wants Derek gone, get me a meeting, Garrett said. Tonight, if possible. Claire nodded slowly. I'll make some calls. She stood gathering her coat. At the door, she paused. Garrett, whatever happens, don't die. I already lost Dad. I can't lose you too. I'm not planning to die. Nobody ever plans to. Claire looked at Lena. Take care of him. He doesn't know how to take care of himself. She walked out into the snow. That evening, Shadow began to growl. Low, steady, dangerous, the growl of an animal who's sensed a threat before anyone else. Garrett was on his feet, instantly, weapon drawn. Lena, back room, now. What, now? She grabbed her crutches and moved Shadow, flanking her protectively. Garrett approached the window and looked out into the darkness. A figure stood at the edge of the tree line. Not approaching, not hiding, just standing. Watching. Garrett opened the door and stepped onto the porch, weapon raised. Whoever you are, you've got 5 seconds to identify yourself. My name is Miguel Torres. The figure raised both hands. Claire sent me. She said you could help. Garrett didn't lower his weapon. Walk toward me, slowly, hands where I can see them. The man approached, Hispanic, mid-30s, wearing civilian clothes but carrying himself like law enforcement. His face was tense with fear, not of Garrett, but of being seen. If Derek finds out I'm here, I'm dead, Miguel said. You understand that just talking to you is enough to get me killed. Then talk fast. What do you know? Miguel reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out a phone. Everything, he said. I know everything. They sat around the kitchen table while Miguel laid out the evidence. Dates, names, bank records, screenshots of coded messages, photos of women who'd been reported missing, and photos of those same women being loaded into unmarked vans. It started 8 years ago, Miguel said, his voice flat with contained rage. Derek was bringing in extra cash by looking the other way when certain vehicles passed through the county. Then he realized he could do more than look away. He could participate. How many women? Garrett asked. That I know of, 12 confirmed. Maybe more. He works with a network out of Seattle. They handle the buyers, he handles the supply. Usually picks women from shelters, addiction programs, anywhere people fall through the cracks. And nobody noticed. People noticed. They just couldn't prove anything. Derek's smart. He never leaves evidence, never gets his hands dirty. He's got deputies who handle the rough stuff, people so deep in it they can't turn on him without destroying themselves. Why haven't you gone to the FBI? Miguel laughed bitterly. I tried, twice. First time my contact went silent. Second time I got a visit from Derek himself. He didn't threaten me directly, he's too smart for that. He just mentioned that my mother lives alone in Missoula, that she walks the same route to church every Sunday, that it would be tragic if something happened to her. So you've been gathering evidence for how long? 2 years, waiting for the right moment, for someone who could actually use it. Miguel looked at Garrett directly. Claire says you're a SEAL, that you've done this kind of thing before. I've brought down networks bigger than this one. Then you know you can't just arrest Derek. The moment he feels threatened, everyone who's helped him will disappear. The witnesses, the evidence, me all gone. What are you suggesting? Miguel pulled out one more item. A file folder thick with documents. Derek has a meeting scheduled in 3 days. A buyer from overseas. Very high profile. If we can catch him in the act with the buyer, with evidence, with witnesses, even his connections won't be able to save him. Garrett took the folder and opened it. What he saw made his blood run cold. The buyer's profile. The location. The merchandise being offered. And a photograph. Lena's photograph. He knows she's alive, Miguel said quietly. He knows she's in the county, and he's already promised her to this buyer as a special item. From the back room, Lena's voice came thin with horror. She'd heard everything. He's going to sell me. That's why he's hunting so hard. He's going to sell me. Garrett closed the folder. His hands weren't shaking. His voice didn't waver. But somewhere inside him, something old and cold and deadly woke up. 3 days, he said. Tell me the plan. Miguel spread the documents across the kitchen table, his hands moving quickly, nervously, like a man who knew every second spent here was borrowed time. The meeting happens at an abandoned lumber mill outside Cascade. Derek's used it before, isolated multiple exits easy to control. The buyer arrives at midnight. They'll inspect the merchandise first, then transfer payment. Merchandise. Garrett's voice was ice. You mean women. 3 others besides Lena, all taken from shelters within the last month. Derek's been holding them at a property his cousin owns outside of town. Lena had emerged from the back room. Her face was pale, but her jaw was set. Shadow pressed against her leg, sensing her distress. I want to help, she said. No. Garrett didn't hesitate. Absolutely not. This is my fight. He destroyed my life. He's going to destroy other women's lives. I won't sit here and hide while you're the target. Garrett turned to face her. The moment you show yourself, every plan we make becomes worthless. Derek wants you specifically. That means you're leverage, and leverage doesn't walk into the enemy's hands. Then what am I supposed to do? Wait, Prey. You're supposed to survive. That's the mission. Everything else is secondary. Lena's eyes flashed with anger. Don't treat me like a victim. I was a combat medic. I've seen worse than Derek Marsh. I'm not treating you like a victim. I'm treating you like the most important piece on the board. Garrett stepped closer. If you die, Derek wins. If you testify, Derek loses everything. Your survival isn't cowardice, it's strategy. The words hung between them. Miguel cleared his throat. He's right. Without Lena's testimony tying Derek directly to the trafficking operation, all we have is circumstantial evidence. She's the only living witness who can put him at the scene, who can describe what he did, who he threatened. Then get me to someone who can take my statement, Lena said. FBI, state attorney, anyone. We tried that. People die. Miguel's voice was heavy. The only way this works is if we take Derek down so publicly, so completely that no one can make it disappear. We need the buyer. We need the transaction. We need it all on tape. Garrett studied the documents again. Floor plans, security assessments, timing estimates. How many men will Derek have? 6, maybe 8. His most trusted deputies. Plus the buyer's security, probably another 4. Weapons, standard law enforcement issue. But Derek carries military-grade equipment in his personal vehicle. He's paranoid. Good. Paranoid men make mistakes. Garrett looked up from the papers. I'll need 48 hours to scout the location. Find positions. Plan exits. He turned to Miguel. You stay close to Derek. Act normal. Don't give him any reason to suspect you've turned. And if he already suspects, then you won't make it to the meeting. And neither will we. Miguel swallowed hard, but nodded. He gathered his things, moving toward the door. Garrett. He paused, hand on the frame. I've been waiting 2 years for someone to help me do this. Don't let me down. I don't plan to. Miguel disappeared into the night. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Lena said quietly, You're going to get yourself killed. Probably not. That's not reassuring. Garrett turned to look at her. In the dim light, she looked smaller than she had before, not physically, but somehow diminished by the weight of what she'd learned. 3 years ago, he said, I led a team into a compound in Syria. 17 hostages, 32 guards, extraction window of 6 minutes before reinforcements arrived. He paused. We got everyone out. Every single one. How? Because we planned. Because we trained. Because we didn't panic when things went wrong. He held her gaze. This isn't Syria. It's one sheriff and a handful of corrupt deputies. I've faced worse odds. The odds aren't what worry me. What does? Lena was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I've already lost everything once. My leg, my career, my belief that the world makes sense. She looked at him. I don't know if I can lose something else. Garrett understood what she wasn't saying. He crossed the room slowly and took her hands in his. You're not going to lose me. You can't promise that. No, I can't. He squeezed gently. But I can promise I'll fight like hell to come back. And I haven't broken a promise yet. Shadow whined softly, pressing between them as if sensing something shifting in the air. Lena laughed a small, broken sound. Even the dog knows this is crazy. The dog also attacked a man twice his size to protect you. He understands commitment. For the first time in days, Lena's eyes softened. Why are you doing this, really? Not the mission speech. Not the duty talk. Why do you care what happens to me? Garrett didn't answer immediately. He thought about the last 12 years. The deployments. The divorces, his own and his teammates. The funerals. The flag-draped coffins. The hollow eyes of men who'd seen too much and felt too little. He thought about Megan. about the home that never existed, about the family he'd never had time to build. He thought about the woman standing in front of him, broken but unbeaten, afraid but still fighting. "Because you remind me why I started doing this in the first place," he said finally. "Before it became routine. Before I stopped feeling anything. You walked through a blizzard on one leg with a wounded dog because you refused to give up. That's not weakness. That's the most human thing I've seen in years." Lena's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I've been scared for so long I forgot what it felt like to not be." "I know. I don't want to be scared anymore." "Then let me carry it for a while. Just until you're strong enough to carry it yourself." She nodded slowly. And for the first time since he'd found her in the storm, she let herself lean into him. Not for support, not for protection, just for the simple human comfort of not being alone. Shadow settled at their feet, his tail wagging softly. Outside, the wind continued to howl, but inside, for one brief moment, there was peace. The next morning, Claire returned with supplies and news. "Derek's getting impatient," she said, dumping bags of groceries on the counter. "He's pulled in deputies from 2 neighboring counties to help search, put out an APB claiming Lena's armed and dangerous, possibly connected to a meth operation." "Meth?" Lena's voice sharpened with disbelief. "I've never touched drugs in my life." "He doesn't need it to be true. He needs it to justify deadly force when they find you." Claire's expression was grim. "If one of those deputies spots you, they won't try to arrest you. They'll shoot first and claim you resisted." Garrett processed this silently. The timeline had just compressed. "How long before the search reaches this area?" 2 days, maybe less if the weather clears. The meeting with the buyer is in 3 days. Then you've got a problem." Garrett stood and walked to the window. Snow still fell steadily, but the wind had died. Within hours, the roads would be passable. Within a day, Derek's men would expand their search radius. "We need to move the timeline up," he said. "Move it up how the buyer isn't arriving early. Derek isn't changing his schedule." "Then we force his hand." Garrett turned back to face them. "We let him find her." Silence. Lena spoke first. "You want to use me as bait?" "I want to control where the confrontation happens. Right now, Derek has all the advantages terrain numbers timing. If we let him find you on his terms, we lose. But if we choose where you appear, how he responds, what options he has." "We control the battlefield," Claire finished. "Military thinking. It's kept me alive this long." Lena was quiet for a moment. Then she stood steadier on her prosthetic than she'd been days before. "What do you need me to do?" "Tomorrow morning, you take Shadow and walk to the main road. Let yourself be seen. Make sure at least one person can report your location. And then you disappear. Lead them toward the lumber mill. Make Derek think you're trying to reach someone, get help, expose him. He'll panic. He'll accelerate his timeline. He'll come after me personally. Yes, that's the point." Garrett held her gaze. "You'll never be alone. I'll be within 50 yards at all times, but he needs to believe you're vulnerable. He needs to believe he's won. And when he does, that's when we take him down." Lena absorbed this. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "I trust you." "Good. Don't stop trusting me no matter what happens." Claire stepped forward. "What about the other women, the ones he's holding?" "Miguel is working on that. If we take down Derek, his operation collapses. The deputies will scatter. Someone will talk. And if they don't, if those women disappear before we can reach them." The question hung in the air. Garrett didn't have an answer. Sometimes he knew you couldn't save everyone. You just saved who you could. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She sat by the fire watching the flames, Shadow's head in her lap. The dog's breathing was steady, his wound healing cleanly. He'd survived worse than this. So had she. The sound of footsteps made her turn. Garrett appeared from the back room, clearly unable to sleep himself. "Mind company?" She shook her head. He settled into the chair across from her, and for a while neither spoke. "Can I ask you something?" Lena finally said. "Anything." "Your wife, Megan. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd chosen differently, if you'd stayed home?" Garrett was silent for a long moment. "Every day," he admitted. "For the first 2 years after she left, I ran that simulation constantly. What if I'd retired earlier? What if I'd been there when she needed me? What if I'd put her first, just once? Did you find an answer? I found the wrong ones. I told myself she was weak, that she didn't understand sacrifice, that she abandoned me when I needed support." He shook his head. "Took me years to realize the truth. Which is that she wasn't wrong to leave. She married a man who loved the mission more than anything else. She waited for years hoping that would change. It didn't, so she chose herself." "Do you blame her?" "I did. For a long time, I blamed her for not being strong enough to wait." Garrett's voice was heavy. "Now I blame myself for thinking she should have to." Lena understood that weight. She'd carried something similar, the belief that love should be enough to survive anything, followed by the crushing realization that it wasn't. "Derek used to tell me I was lucky he wanted me," she said quietly. "That no one else would tolerate someone so broken. I believed him. Even when he hurt me, part of me thought I deserved it. You know that's not true. I know it now. But knowing something in your head and believing it in your heart are different things." She stroked Shadow's fur. "He broke something inside me that I don't know how to fix." Garrett leaned forward. "When I came home from my last deployment, my commander said something I didn't understand at the time. He said I needed to learn how to breathe like an ordinary man again." "What does that mean?" "It means that when you spend years in survival mode, fighting, hiding, protecting yourself, you forget how to exist without the threat. The adrenaline becomes normal. Peace feels dangerous. You start creating problems because you don't know how to function without them." Lena nodded slowly. "I feel like that. Like I'm always waiting for the next blow. Even when nothing's happening, my body stays tense. It takes time. And it takes someone patient enough to wait while you figure it out." Garrett's eyes met hers. "I'm not going anywhere, Lena. Whatever happens with Derek, whatever comes after, I'm not leaving. You barely know me. I know enough." He paused. "I know you're brave. I know you're kind. I know you protected an animal when protecting yourself would have been easier. And I know that you're the first person in years who's made me want to stay instead of run." Lena's breath caught. "That's terrifying," she whispered. "I know." "What if it doesn't work? What if we're too broken to build something real? Then we'll be broken together. And that's still better than being broken alone." Shadow lifted his head, looking between them as if following the conversation. Lena laughed softly. "He likes you. He doesn't like anyone." "Animals are good judges of character. So are soldiers." She reached across the space between them and took his hand. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a declaration. It was a question. Garrett answered by holding on. Dawn came cold and gray. Lena, dressed in layers, checked her prosthetic and prepared to become bait for a monster. Garrett handed her a small device, barely larger than a button. "Tracker. Range of 5 miles. As long as you're carrying this, I know exactly where you are." She tucked it into her jacket pocket. And if Derek finds it? He won't. He's looking for phones' recording devices. This is military tech. Civilian scanners can't detect it. And Shadow circled anxiously, sensing something was wrong. He should stay here, Garrett said. If Derek sees him, he'll know it's a trap. Lena knelt beside the dog, cupping his face in her hands. You stay, boy. Stay and protect. She kissed his forehead. I'll come back. I promise. Shadow whined, pressing against her, refusing to accept the command. Shadow. Stay. The dog's ears flattened. His body trembled with the effort of obedience, but he stayed. Lena stood, blinked back tears, and walked out the door. Garrett watched her go through the window. For the first time in 12 years, he wasn't walking toward danger. He was sending someone he cared about toward it instead. The irony wasn't lost on him. Lena reached the main road within an hour. Her prosthetic ached from the cold and the uneven terrain, but she forced herself forward. Every step was deliberate, visible, leaving clear tracks in the snow. She passed a gas station first. The attendant looked up, did a double take, and reached for his phone before she was even past the pumps. Good. A mile further, she saw the first patrol car. It slowed the deputy inside, squinting through the windshield. Lena kept walking. Didn't run. Didn't hide. Let him see exactly who she was and where she was going. The car stopped. A door opened. Ma'am, stay where you are. Lena turned to face him. Young deputy, nervous, hand on his weapon. Can I help you, officer? I need to see some identification. I don't have any. I've been walking for days. The deputy's eyes went to her leg, to her face. Recognition flashed. Don't move. Stay right there. He reached for his radio. Lena bolted. Not fast. She couldn't be fast. Not with the prosthetic, not on icy ground, but fast enough to disappear into the tree line before he could react. Stop. Stop. Or I'll shoot. He didn't shoot. They never did when they weren't sure. Lena crashed through underbrush, breath burning, heart pounding. She could hear him calling for backup, his voice high with panic. Within minutes, the forest would be flooded with deputies. Within hours, Derek would know exactly where she was. The trap was set. Now she just had to survive long enough for it to close. 3 hours later, Derek Marsh stood at the edge of the forest, staring at the tracks in the snow. His perfect face, the face that charmed voters and victims alike, was twisted with something that might have been hunger. She's heading northwest, one of his deputies reported, toward the old lumber mill. She's not heading anywhere by accident. Derek's voice was calm, controlled, deadly. She knows something, or someone's helping her. Should we call in more units? No. We handle this ourselves, quietly. Derek turned to face his men, 6 of them, all hand-picked, all complicit. I want her alive. Damaged is fine, but alive. The buyer pays double for fighters. The deputies exchanged glances, but didn't question. They'd stopped questioning Derek years ago. Move out, spread formation, and remember anyone she might have talked to is a liability. Derek smiled. No witnesses. The hunt began. From a ridge a quarter-mile away, Garrett watched through binoculars. 6 men, armed, moving in a search pattern that spoke to training, if not intelligence, and Derek at the center directing them like pieces on a chessboard. Garrett had faced worse odds, but those times he'd had a team, air support, extraction plans. Now he had a hunting rifle, a handgun, and a woman he couldn't afford to lose. He tracked Lena's progress through the tracker signal. She was moving steadily toward the mill, staying just ahead of the search pattern, leaving enough signs to keep them following without catching her. Smart. Disciplined. The combat training hadn't left her, but she was tiring. The signal showed her pace slowing, her route becoming less erratic. She had maybe 2 more hours before they caught up. He needed those hours to count. Garrett moved down the ridge, silent as smoke, beginning his own hunt. The first deputy never saw him coming. One moment the man was scanning the trees ahead. The next, Garrett's arm was around his throat, cutting off blood flow until consciousness faded. He lowered the body, gently removed the radio, and continued. The second deputy was harder, more alert, moving in pairs with another. Garrett waited until they separated to check a fallen log, then struck. The chokehold was clean, efficient. The man dropped without a sound. His partner turned at the wrong moment. "What the—" Garrett's fist connected with his temple before the sentence finished. 2 down. 4 remaining, plus Derek. The odds were improving. But Derek had stopped moving. He stood in a clearing, head tilted, listening. Some predator instinct had warned him something was wrong. "Check in," he said into his radio. "All units check in." Silence. "Daniels, report." Static. "Morrison. Status." Nothing. Derek's eyes swept the trees, suddenly alert. "We've got company," he said softly. "Find him." The remaining deputies shifted from hunters to hunted weapons, raised, scanning every shadow. Garrett smiled. This was his territory now. Lena heard the silence and knew something had changed. The sounds of pursuit that had followed her for hours, boots crunching through snow, radios crackling occasional shouts, had gone quiet. She stopped behind a large pine, catching her breath, checking the horizon. Nothing moved. Then her tracker vibrated once, twice, 3 times. Garrett's signal. Danger close. She pressed herself against the tree, making herself as small as possible. Footsteps. Close. Too close. "I know you're here, Lena." Derek's voice. Calm. Almost gentle. "You've been running so long. Aren't you tired? Wouldn't it be easier to just stop?" She didn't move. Didn't breathe. "He can't protect you. Whoever he is, this soldier you found, he's one man. I have the entire county. I have the system. I have everything." His footsteps moved closer. "Come out. Come out, and I promise I'll make it quick. You won't suffer. The buyers, they like fighters, but I can tell them you're gentle. I can make sure you're placed somewhere kind." Lena's hand found a rock. Solid. Heavy. The footsteps stopped. Right on the other side of her tree. "I can hear your breathing, Lena. I've always been able to hear you. In the bedroom, in the kitchen. Even when you thought you were quiet, I knew exactly where you were." His hand appeared around the trunk. Lena swung. The rock connected with his forearm, and Derek screamed more surprise than pain. Lena ran, not caring about direction, just needing distance. She made it 10 feet before her prosthetic caught on a root. She went down hard. Derek was on her in seconds, flipping her onto her back, his weight pinning her to the frozen ground. There she is. His face was inches from hers, handsome and horrible. "My beautiful broken wife, did you really think you could escape me? I'm not your wife anymore. You'll always be mine. That's what the vows meant, in sickness and in health, till death do us part." His hand closed around her throat. "And death is so close now, Lena. So close." She couldn't breathe. Couldn't fight. Couldn't. The gunshot split the air. Derek's body jerked, his grip loosened. Lena saw the blood bloom across his shoulder before she saw Garrett emerge from the trees, rifle raised. "Get off her." Derek rolled away, clutching his wound eyes, wild with pain and rage. "You shot me! You actually— That was a warning! The next one goes through your skull!" Garrett advanced, keeping the rifle trained on Derek's center mass. "Lena, get behind me." She crawled backward, gasping, until she felt Garrett's leg against her back. "This is assault on a law enforcement officer." Derek spat, blood seeping between his fingers. "You'll spend the rest of your life in prison." "I doubt it." Garrett's voice was stone. "See, I have recordings of your conversations with Miguel Torres. I have evidence of your trafficking operation. And in about 20 minutes I have FBI agents arriving at your lumber mill to arrest everyone involved." Derek's face went pale. "That's impossible. Miguel's been building a case against you for 2 years. He was just waiting for someone crazy enough to help him finish it." For the first time, genuine fear flickered in Derek's eyes. "You don't understand. The people I work with, they don't let witnesses survive. If you arrest me, they'll kill everyone. The women I'm holding. Miguel, your sister, everyone. That's why we're not just arresting you." Garrett smiled coldly. "We're burning your entire network to the ground. Tonight." The sound of helicopters emerged in the distance, growing closer. Derek's head turned toward the sound, calculating, desperate. Then his hand moved to his belt. Garrett saw the gun a split second before Derek fired. He dove sideways, pulling Lena with him. The bullet hit a tree where her head had been. Garrett's return shot was perfect. Derek Marsh collapsed into the snow, eyes staring at the gray sky, the monster finally silenced. Lena stared at the body for a long moment. Then she began to cry. Not from grief, not from fear, from relief. The nightmare was over. The helicopters descended through the gray sky like angels of judgment, their rotors beating the air into submission. Garrett kept his weapon trained on Derek's body until the first FBI agents hit the ground, weapons-drawn voices, sharp with authority. "Federal agents, everyone on the ground." Garrett lowered his rifle slowly and raised his hands. "Garrett Stone, former Navy SEAL. The man on the ground is Sheriff Derek Marsh. He's dead. The woman behind me is Lena Marsh, the primary witness." An agent approached, weapon still raised. "How do we know you're not one of his men?" "Call Special Agent Rodriguez out of the Seattle field office. He's been tracking this network for 18 months. Miguel Torres coordinated with him yesterday." Garrett's voice was calm, steady. "We don't have time for this. There are 3 women being held at a property outside Cascade. Every minute we waste is a minute they might be moved or killed." The agent hesitated, then spoke into his radio. A tense 30 seconds passed. "Rodriguez confirms. Stand down." The agent lowered his weapon. "Where are the hostages?" Garrett turned to Lena. "Do you know where Derek kept them? His cousin's property, the old Walker farm about 6 miles northeast." Lena's voice was hoarse but clear. "Underground storm cellar. That's where he processes them before transport." The agent was already relaying coordinates. Within seconds, a second helicopter peeled away toward the location. "We need medical attention for the witness," Garrett said. "Hypothermia, frostbite, possible infection from an untreated wound." "I'm fine," Lena said. "You're not fine. You haven't been fine for days." "I'm alive. That's fine enough for now." An agent helped Lena to her feet, wrapping a thermal blanket around her shoulders. She looked at Derek's body one final time, the man who had stolen 3 years of her life, who had broken her in ways she was still discovering. She felt nothing. No grief, no satisfaction. Just emptiness, where the fear used to be. "Is it over?" she whispered. Garrett moved to her side. "The hard part is, what comes next is different. What comes next? Healing. That's harder than fighting." Lena leaned into him, exhaustion finally winning over adrenaline. "I don't know how to do that." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." The Walker farm was worse than anyone expected. Garrett insisted on being part of the rescue team, despite the FBI's protests. He'd seen trafficking operations before. He knew what they might find. Nothing prepared him for the reality. The storm cellar was 30 feet underground, accessed through a rusted door hidden beneath a collapsed barn. The FBI agents descended first, weapons ready. The screaming started before they reached the bottom. Not the screaming of victims, the screaming of women who thought they were about to be moved, sold, killed. Women who had learned that any change meant suffering. Federal agents, we're here to help. The screaming didn't stop. Garrett pushed past the agents and descended into the darkness. His voice when he spoke carried 12 years of experience calming people in crisis. My name is Garrett. I was a Navy SEAL. A woman named Lena Marsh sent us. Do you know her? Silence. Then a small voice. Lena. The sheriff's wife. His ex-wife. She escaped. She's safe. And she told us where to find you. A face emerged from the shadows. Young. 20s, maybe. Eyes hollowed by weeks of captivity. She's alive. He said he killed her. He said that's what happens to women who run. He lied. He's dead now. And you're free. One by one, 3 women emerged from the corners of that underground hell. Thin. Bruised. Broken in ways that wouldn't show on medical scans. One of them collapsed when she reached the surface. Another started laughing, high hysterical, unable to stop. The third simply stood in the snow face turned toward the sky, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Garrett watched them and felt something crack inside his chest. This was what he'd fought against for 12 years. This was what he'd saved strangers from in countries whose names most Americans couldn't pronounce. And it had been happening here, in Montana, under the protection of a badge. How many others? He asked one of the FBI agents. How many women has this network taken? The agent's face was grim. Based on Torres's evidence, at least 40 in the last 5 years. Mostly from shelters, addiction programs, rural areas where people disappear without notice. And the buyers, international. We've got names, but most of them are beyond our reach. The agent paused. Except one. The buyer who was supposed to arrive tonight, we intercepted his vehicle an hour ago. He's in custody. Who is he? Businessman from Eastern Europe. Very wealthy. Very connected. The agent lowered his voice. And very angry. He's already making threats. Says his associates won't take kindly to their investment being disrupted. Garrett absorbed this. The immediate threat was neutralized, but networks like this didn't disappear because you cut off one head. They grew new ones. Lena needs protection, he said. Real protection. If this buyer has connections, we're already making arrangements. Safe house. New identity if necessary. The agent met his eyes. But from what Torres says, she won't want to hide. What do you mean? She wants to testify. Publicly. Everything she knows about Derek, the network, the buyers. She wants to burn it all down. Garrett found her back at the cabin 3 hours later. Claire had brought her there along with medical supplies and Shadow. The dog hadn't left Lena's side since their reunion, his head constantly in her lap, his eyes watching Garrett with something that looked almost like gratitude. You should be resting, Garrett said. Lena looked up from where she sat by the fire. I've been resting for 3 years, resting while he hurt me, resting while he built an empire on the bodies of women like me. Her voice hardened. I'm done resting. The FBI said you want to testify. They said they could give me a new identity, put me somewhere safe, let me disappear. That's the smart choice. Since when have I made smart choices? Lena stood crossing the room to face him. Derek isn't the network. He's one piece of it. If I run, someone else takes his place. More women disappear. More families are destroyed. And if you testify, you become a target. These people don't forget witnesses. I've been a target my whole life. At least this way it means something. Garrett wanted to argue. Every tactical instinct he had screamed that visibility meant vulnerability, that survival required anonymity. But he looked at her, really looked, and saw something he recognized. The same fire that had driven him into the SEALs. The same refusal to accept that evil wins. The same belief that some things matter more than survival. Then we do it together, he said. You testify, and I make sure you live long enough to finish. You don't owe me that. I'm not doing it because I owe you. I'm doing it because... He stopped wrestling with words that didn't come easily. Because what? Because watching you fight makes me want to fight again. For something besides missions and orders. For something real. Lena's breath caught. That's either the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, or the most terrifying. Can't it be both? She laughed, a real laugh, the first one he'd heard from her. It transformed her face, reminded him that she was young, that she'd had a life before Derek Marsh tried to destroy it. Both, she agreed. Definitely both. Shadow's tail thumped against the floor, and for one moment the cabin felt less like a hiding place and more like a home. The trial preparation began immediately. Federal prosecutors flew in from Washington. Lena spent hours recounting every detail, the abuse, the threats, the conversations she'd overheard the women she'd seen disappear. Miguel Torres provided corroborating evidence. Claire testified about the animals she'd treated, the patterns she'd noticed. Slowly, piece by piece, the scope of Derek's operation emerged. 47 confirmed victims over 8 years. A network spanning 5 states. Corrupt officials at every level, local police, state legislators, even a federal judge who'd quietly dismissed cases when they got too close to exposure. The news coverage was relentless. Trafficking ring exposed in rural Montana. Hero veteran survives blizzard, brings down corrupt sheriff. The women Derek Marsh destroyed, and the one who destroyed him. Lena refused all interviews except one, a written statement for a veterans organization that helped abuse survivors. I don't want to be famous, she told Garrett. I want to be forgotten. I want to walk down a street and have no one know what happened to me. That might take time. I have time. For the first time in years, I have time. But time, as it turned out, was exactly what they didn't have. The call came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, 2 weeks after Derek's death. Garrett answered on the second ring, instantly awake. Stone. This is Agent Martinez. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The Eastern European buyer Volkov. He made bail. Garrett's blood went cold. He was held on trafficking charges. How did he make bail? Expensive lawyers, diplomatic pressure, someone with a lot of money and influence wants him out. Martinez paused. And 3 hours after his release, his tracking device stopped transmitting. He disappeared. Vanished. Private jet out of Seattle flight plan filed for Vancouver, but the plane never landed there. Garrett was already pulling on clothes, reaching for weapons. Is Lena's location secure? We thought so. But Stone, we intercepted a communication before Volkov's people went dark. There's a price on her head. $2 million for her delivery alive. Another $1 million for anyone who helped her. Claire. Miguel. We're moving them to protective custody now. But Lena, I've got her. He was at her bedroom door in seconds. She was already awake, Shadow alert beside her, both of them sensing the shift in the air. What's wrong? Get dressed. Now. We're moving. Lena didn't argue. She was on her feet, pulling on clothes, reaching for her prosthetic with practiced speed. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they can't find us." "Where's that?" Garrett grabbed the go-bag he'd prepared days ago. Weapons, cache, documents, medical supplies. "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." They were out the door in 3 minutes. Behind them, the cabin sat quiet in the darkness. An hour later, flames would consume it completely. Volkov's men weren't subtle. They ran from Montana into Idaho, switching vehicles twice, avoiding main roads. Garrett drove with the focus of a man who'd spent his life evading enemies, anticipating moves, staying 3 steps ahead. But Volkov had resources Garrett couldn't match. The first tail appeared outside Coeur d'Alene, a black SUV that appeared from nowhere and stayed exactly 500 yards behind them, no matter how many turns Garrett made. "They found us," Lena said, voice tight. "They found the vehicle, not us." Garrett pulled into a rest stop, positioned the truck behind a row of semis. "When I say go, take shadow and run for the truck stop. Inside. Find the largest group of people and stay with them. And you, I'm going to have a conversation. Garrett, go." She went. Garrett stepped out of the truck and walked directly toward the SUV. The driver's window lowered. A man with a shaved head and a scar across his throat studied him with professional interest. "You're Stone, the SEAL. And you're following the wrong person. Mr. Volkov simply wants to discuss an arrangement. The woman for $3 million. You walk away rich, everyone survives." Garrett smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. "Tell Volkov something for me. Tell him I spent 12 years hunting men like him. Tell him I've killed 37 people who thought they were protected by money and power. Tell him that if he comes near Lena again, I'll add him to that number." The man's eyes flickered, just for a moment. "You're one man, Stone. Volkov has an army. I don't need an army. I just need one clear shot." Garrett turned his back on the SUV and walked away. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. 3 days later, they reached the safe house. It was a ranch in Wyoming, owned by a retired Marine colonel who owed Garrett 3 life debts from operations that officially never happened. No records. No connections. Completely off the grid. "You'll be safe here," the colonel, a grizzled man named Harrison, assured them. "I've got 20 acres of sensor coverage and enough firepower to start a small war. Let's hope it doesn't come to that." "Son, in my experience, it always comes to that eventually." Harrison looked at Lena. "You're the one who brought down the sheriff. I'm the one who survived him. Same thing in my book." He extended a weathered hand. "Welcome to Fort Harrison. Population us." The days that followed were strange. For the first time since the blizzard, there was no immediate threat. No running, no hiding, just space and time and the uncomfortable challenge of figuring out what came next. Garrett trained. Old habits died hard. Every morning he ran 5 miles through the Wyoming scrubland, pushing his body to its limits, trying to exhaust the restlessness that never fully left him. Lena healed. Her frostbite resolved. Her strength returned. She began walking further each day, Shadow always at her side, testing the limits of her prosthetic and her endurance. And slowly, carefully, they began to learn each other. "Why did you join the SEALs?" Lena asked one evening, sitting on the ranch house porch. Garrett considered the question. "My father was a Marine. His father was Army. Service was just what our family did. That's not a reason. That's an explanation." He smiled slightly. "You're right. The real reason." He was quiet for a moment. "When I was 17, A girl from my high school disappeared. Katie Morrison. Everyone assumed she ran away. Her family was poor. Her home life was bad. People said she wanted to escape. But she didn't run away. No, she was taken. By a man who'd been watching her for months. They found her body 3 years later buried in his basement, along with 4 other girls. Lena's hand found his in the darkness. I couldn't save Katie. I was just a kid, but I swore I'd spend my life stopping men like the one who took her. Garrett's voice was rough. That's why I joined. That's why I specialized in hostage rescue. That's why I couldn't walk away from you on that road. Because I reminded you of her. Because you reminded me of why I started. Before the politics. Before the bureaucracy. Before I got so tired I forgot what I was fighting for. Lena leaned her head against his shoulder. I was going to be a surgeon, she said quietly. Before the army. Before the IED. I was going to save lives in operating rooms, not on battlefields. Why didn't you? Because my father got sick. Cancer. No insurance. I enlisted because they'd pay for his treatment. She laughed, softly, bitterly. He died anyway. 2 months after I shipped out. I never got to say goodbye. I'm sorry. Don't be. He would have hated me being sorry. He would have told me to stop wallowing and do something useful. She paused. That's what I'm going to do. After the trial. I'm going back to school. Finishing my medical degree. Opening a clinic for abuse survivors somewhere they can get help without judgment. That sounds like a plan. It's more than a plan. It's a promise. To myself. To all the women Derek destroyed. Her voice hardened. He wanted to break me. Instead, he gave me a mission. Garrett turned to look at her. In the fading light, she seemed both fragile and unbreakable. A contradiction he was beginning to understand. Can I be part of that mission? Lena met his eyes. You already are. The attack came 3 weeks later, 2 a.m. No warning, just the sudden explosion of sensors and the harsh wail of Harrison's alarm system. Garrett was on his feet before his eyes fully opened. Perimeter breach, west side, multiple hostiles. Harrison's voice crackled through the radio. I count 8, maybe 10. Approaching in tactical formation. Volkov found us. Looks that way. I've got the east side. You've got the west. The woman stays in the basement with the dog. Garrett grabbed his rifle and moved to the bedroom door. Lena was already awake, already reaching for the weapon he'd taught her to use. Basement. Now. I can fight. I know you can. But if we both die up here, Volkov wins. Someone needs to survive to testify. She wanted to argue. He could see it in her eyes. But she understood strategy. Don't die, she said. Working on it. She kissed him hard, desperate a promise, and a plea wrapped in one breathless moment. Then she was gone. Shadow guarding her descent into the basement's reinforced shelter. Garrett took position at the western window. Through the night vision scope, he counted them. 12 men. Professional. Moving in coordinated teams. Volkov hadn't sent amateurs. The first shot came from Harrison's position, a clean hit that dropped the lead attacker mid-stride. Return fire erupted immediately, controlled bursts suppressing fire textbook assault tactics. Garrett waited. Patient. Disciplined. A figure appeared at the edge of his window's range. He fired. The figure dropped. 2 down. 10 remaining. The next 20 minutes were chaos. Garrett moved through the house like a ghost, using Harrison's labyrinth of kill zones and choke points to maximum effect. Every shot counted. Every movement was deliberate. 6 attackers fell before they reached the building. 4 made it inside. Garrett met them in the hallway. Close quarters. No time for precision. Just instinct and training and the absolute refusal to let these men reach the basement. The first attacker died with Garrett's knife in his throat. The second managed one shot wide, punching through drywall before Garrett's bullet found his chest. The third and fourth came together coordinated professional. Garrett took a round to his vest. The impact drove him backward, stealing his breath. He fired anyway. One fell. The other kept coming. They collided in the narrow hallway, grappling, fighting for control of weapons that became useless at this range. The attacker was strong, trained. But Garrett was fighting for something more than mission objectives. He was fighting for her. His hand found the man's throat, squeezed, held on until the struggling stopped. Silence fell over the house. Garrett lay on the floor, chest heaving, tasting blood from a split lip. "Stone." Harrison's voice came from somewhere distant. "Status? Clear." "You hit. Vest caught it. I'm fine." He wasn't fine. His ribs screamed with every breath, but he was alive. That was enough. He forced himself upright and descended to the basement. Lena met him at the reinforced door, shadow bristling beside her. "You're bleeding." "Just a scratch." "That's a lot of blood for a scratch." "Okay, maybe a medium-sized scratch." She pulled him into her arms, holding him fiercely, feeling his heart pound against her chest. "You're an idiot," she whispered. "Probably." "I thought you were dead." "Not yet." She pulled back to look at him, tears streaming down her face. "If you ever scare me like that again, I know, you'll kill me yourself." "Worse. I'll make you explain to Claire why you got shot." Despite everything, the pain, the exhaustion, the 12 dead men upstairs, Garrett laughed. And in that moment, surrounded by chaos and death and the aftermath of violence, he realized something that changed everything. He was in love with her. Not the careful, measured affection he'd felt for Megan. Not the duty-bound loyalty he'd given to his country. Something deeper. Something he didn't have words for. Something worth living for. "Lena," he said, when this is over, when Volkov is done, when you testify and the network burns and everything settles. Yes, I want to build something. With you. Something that isn't about running or fighting or surviving." Lena's eyes softened. "What do you want to build?" "I don't know yet. A life. A home. Something that lasts longer than a mission briefing." He touched her face. "Is that crazy?" "Completely crazy." She smiled through her tears. "But I've been crazy since the moment I let a stranger put me on his motorcycle in a blizzard." Shadow barked once, as if offering his approval. Above them, the first light of dawn began to filter through the smoke and chaos. They were still standing. They were still alive. And for the first time in longer than either of them could remember, they had something to live for beyond survival. The aftermath of the attack took 3 days to fully process. FBI forensics teams swarmed the ranch, documenting evidence, identifying bodies, tracing the assault back to Volkov's network. 12 men had come to kill Lena. 12 men had failed. But Volkov himself remained free. "We tracked his communications to a compound in Belarus," Agent Martinez reported, standing in Harrison's bullet-scarred living room. "He's beyond our reach now. International jurisdiction issues." "So he gets away?" Lena's voice was sharp with disbelief. "He sends assassins to murder me and he just walks?" "Not exactly. The evidence from this attack, combined with Torres's documentation and your testimony, has triggered an international investigation. Interpol is involved. Multiple countries are freezing his assets." "That's not justice. That's paperwork." "Sometimes paperwork is all we have." Garrett watched the exchange silently. He understood Lena's frustration, understood it in his bones. He'd spent 12 years watching monsters escape through loopholes, watching justice bend around money and power. But he'd also learned something else. "Volkov's finished," he said quietly. Lena turned to him. "How can you say that he's alive? He's free. He'll rebuild." "No, he won't." Garrett met her eyes. "I've seen men like him before. They survive by being invisible, by operating in shadows. The moment they become known, truly known, their power evaporates. His buyers will abandon him. His partners will distance themselves. Every government agency in the Western world now has his name on a list. That doesn't feel like enough. It never does. But sometimes survival is victory. You're alive. He wanted you dead. That means you won." Lena absorbed this slowly. The anger didn't disappear, but something in her posture shifted acceptance, perhaps, or the beginning of it. "The trial," she said finally. "When?" Martinez checked his notes. 6 weeks. Federal court in Seattle. We're consolidating charges against the network trafficking, corruption, conspiracy, murder. 13 defendants total. And I testify against all of them. You're our star witness. Your testimony ties everything together." Lena nodded once firmly. "Then let's get started." The 6 weeks that followed were the hardest of Lena's life. Not because of fear, not because of danger, because of memory. The prosecutors needed everything. Every detail of her marriage to Derek, every instance of abuse, every conversation she'd overheard, every woman she'd seen disappear. Day after day, she sat in conference rooms and relived the worst years of her life. "Tell us about the first time he hit you. Describe the incident where he broke your prosthetic. When did you first suspect he was involved in trafficking?" Each question was a wound reopened. Each answer was a piece of herself she had to surrender to strangers. Garrett was there every moment, not speaking, not interfering, just present, a steady anchor in the storm of her own memories. One night after a particularly brutal session, Lena collapsed onto their hotel room bed and stared at the ceiling. "I keep thinking it should get easier," she said, "talking about it. But it doesn't. Every time I tell the story, I'm back there, in that house, under his control." Garrett sat beside her close, but not touching. "That's trauma. It doesn't follow logic. How do you deal with it? All the things you've seen." He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't. Not really. I compartmentalize. Lock it away. Tell myself it's over and move on." He paused. "But it's always there. Waiting. That sounds exhausting." "It is." Lena turned her head to look at him. "What happens when the compartments get full? You break, or you find something strong enough to hold you together?" "What holds you together?" The question hung in the air between them. Garrett reached out and took her hand. "Right now, you." Lena's eyes filled with tears she was too tired to fight. "I'm barely holding myself together." "I know. But sometimes that's enough. Two broken people holding each other up." She pulled him down beside her, wrapping herself around him like he was the only solid thing in a drowning world. "Don't leave me," she whispered. "I know that's weak. I know I'm supposed to be strong, but please don't leave." "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise." "I promise." Shadow jumped onto the bed and settled against their feet, his warmth, a reminder that loyalty didn't require words. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, exhausted, healing in inches. 2 weeks before the trial, Claire arrived with news. "Megan called me," she said, settling into a chair across from Garrett. "Your ex-wife." Garrett's expression didn't change, but something tightened behind his eyes. "What did she want?" "To talk. She saw the news coverage. She knows what happened." And she wants to see you, face to face. She said. Claire hesitated. She said she has things she needs to say. Lena watched the exchange from the doorway, uncertain whether to stay or leave. Garrett noticed. It's okay. You can hear this. Are you going to meet her? I don't know. He turned back to Claire. What do you think? I think you've carried that weight for 6 years. Maybe it's time to set it down. She left me while I was deployed, via voicemail. I know, but closure isn't about what she deserves. It's about what you need. Garrett said nothing for a long moment. Then he looked at Lena. What do you think? She crossed the room and sat beside him. I think the past doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. I think seeing her might hurt, but I think not seeing her might hurt more. You wouldn't mind, Garrett? She took his face in her hands. I trust you, completely. Whatever you need to do to heal, I support it. He kissed her palm. Okay. Set up the meeting. They met at a coffee shop in Seattle 3 days later. Megan looked different than Garrett remembered. Older, obviously, 6 years would do that. But there was something else. A tiredness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She stood when he approached, hands clasped nervously in front of her. Garrett. Thank you for coming. Megan. They sat across from each other, a small table between them, and 6 years of silence. I saw the news, Megan said. What you did. The woman you saved. Lena. Lena. Megan's smile was sad. She's lucky to have found you. I'm the lucky one. A pause. Then Megan spoke again, her voice smaller now. I need to apologize. For how I ended things. For the voicemail. For everything. You don't owe me an apology. Yes, I do. I was a coward. I should have waited. Should have told you to your face. Should have given you the chance to respond. Why didn't you? Megan looked down at her hands. Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd talk me out of it. Afraid I'd see how much I was hurting you and lose my nerve. She laughed bitterly. Turns out I hurt you anyway. I just didn't have to watch. And Tom, the man you left me for. Her face crumpled. We divorced 2 years ago. He wasn't what I thought he was. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made my choices. I lived with them. She looked up at him. I'm not here to ask you to take me back. I know that ship has sailed. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry, and that I was wrong. Wrong about what? About you, about us. I thought you loved the mission more than me. I thought I was competing with your job and losing. She shook her head. But after seeing what a man who's actually selfish looks like, I realized I had it backwards. You weren't choosing the mission over me. You were trying to be the kind of man who could protect people. Protect everyone, not just me. That doesn't excuse the fact that I wasn't there when you needed me. No, but it means I forgave the wrong person. I spent years blaming you when I should have been looking at myself. Garrett absorbed this. Some part of him had waited 6 years to hear these words, had replayed their final conversation 1,000 times, wondering what he could have done differently. Now, hearing her apology, he expected to feel vindicated, triumphant. Instead, he just felt tired. I forgive you, he said. Megan's eyes widened. Just like that. I've spent 6 years being angry. It didn't help. It didn't change anything. And now, he thought of Lena, of Shadow, of the future he was beginning to imagine. Now I have something worth more than old grudges. The woman, Lena. Yes. You love her. It wasn't a question, but Garrett answered anyway. More than I knew I could love anyone. Megan smiled, genuinely this time. Good. You deserve that. She stood gathering her purse. Goodbye, Garrett. And thank you for being the man you are, even when I couldn't appreciate it." She walked out. Garrett sat alone for a long moment, feeling something loosen in his chest, something that had been wound tight for 6 years, slowly unwinding. When he finally left the coffee shop, he felt lighter than he had in longer than he could remember. The trial began on a Monday. The federal courthouse was surrounded by press protesters and curious onlookers. The trafficking case had captured national attention: a corrupt sheriff missing women, a wounded veteran who'd survived against impossible odds. Lena walked through the crowd with her head high. She wore a simple dress, her prosthetic visible below the hem, refusing to hide any part of who she was. Garrett walked beside her Shadow's leash in his hand. The dog had been approved as an emotional support animal, a concession from the judge after Claire testified about Shadow's role in Lena's recovery. The courtroom was packed. 13 defendants sat at the defense tables, former deputies, county officials, business partners who'd profited from human misery. Their lawyers had tried everything to prevent Lena's testimony. Motions to dismiss, claims of compromised evidence, attempts to discredit her mental state. All had failed. When Lena took the stand, the room went silent. The prosecutor approached slowly. "Ms. Marsh, can you describe your relationship with the deceased Sheriff Derek Marsh?" Lena's voice was steady. "He was my husband for 3 years. During that time, he physically and emotionally abused me. He broke my prosthetic leg to prevent me from leaving. He threatened to kill me if I ever tried to escape." "And when did you first become aware of his involvement in human trafficking?" 18 months into our marriage. I overheard a phone call. He was discussing merchandise with someone. I didn't understand at first, but then women started disappearing from the local shelter, and Derek always seemed to know about it before anyone else. "Did you witness any specific transactions?" "Once. A woman named Rosa. Derek brought her to our house, told me she was a housekeeper he'd hired, but I saw the bruises on her wrists. I saw the terror in her eyes. 2 days later, she was gone. Derek said she'd returned to Mexico, but I knew." "How did you know?" Lena's voice cracked for the first time. "Because she looked at me the night before she disappeared, and she said, 'Please, help me. He's going to sell me.' I didn't help her. I was too afraid." "What happened next?" "I tried to leave. Derek stopped me. He said if I ever told anyone what I knew, he'd make me disappear too. He said there were buyers who would pay extra for someone like me." A murmur went through the courtroom. The prosecutor continued walking Lena through 3 years of evidence conversations she'd overheard, patterns she'd noticed the night she'd finally escaped with Shadow into the blizzard. When she finished, even the defense attorneys were silent. Cross-examination was brutal. "Ms. Marsh, you claim your husband was a monster, yet you stayed with him for 3 years. "I stayed because I was afraid. Because he convinced me no one would believe me. Because he controlled every aspect of my life." "You have a history of mental health issues, don't you? PTSD from your military service." "Yes. And Derek used that against me. He told everyone I was unstable, that I was prone to delusions. He was building a narrative so that when I finally spoke up, no one would believe me. Yet here you are, speaking up." "Here I am. Because some things are more important than fear." The defense attorney tried other angles. Inconsistencies in her timeline. Questions about her relationship with Garrett. Suggestions that she'd been manipulated by federal agents seeking a headline. Lena answered each one calmly, firmly, without wavering. By the end of the day, even the most skeptical jurors were watching her with something like respect. Garrett testified the next day. His testimony was shorter, focused on the rescue, the confrontation with Derek, the evidence he'd helped compile with Miguel Torres. When the defense tried to paint him as a vigilante, he responded with military precision. "I used appropriate force to neutralize an immediate threat to human life. Every action I took was within the bounds of Montana's self-defense statutes." and I'd do it again. You killed 13 people in the course of this investigation. I killed 13 men who were trying to kill the woman I love. I'd kill 13 more if necessary. The prosecutor objected. The judge sustained. But the jury had heard enough. Miguel Torres testified last. His evidence was devastating: years of documentation, recorded conversations, financial records tracing payments from international buyers to Derek's accounts. When he finished, the defense had nothing left to argue. The verdict came after 2 days of deliberation. Guilty. On all counts. For every defendant. When the foreman finished reading, Lena buried her face in Garrett's shoulder and wept. Not from joy, not from relief, from the crushing weight of justice finally impossibly arriving. The sentencing took another month. Derek's former deputies received 15 to 25 years each. The county officials who'd looked the other way got 5 to 10. The business partners who'd profited from human trafficking were sentenced to life without parole. But the trial's true impact went far beyond the courtroom. 3 other trafficking networks were exposed through evidence discovered during the investigation. 14 more women were rescued from captivity. Laws were changed at the state level, requiring enhanced oversight of missing persons cases in rural areas. And Lena Marsh became a symbol. She didn't want fame, didn't seek attention. But her story resonated with millions of people who had survived their own monsters, who had been told no one would believe them, who had been broken and rebuilt themselves one painful day at a time. Letters arrived by the hundreds, emails by the thousands, all saying the same thing. Thank you. You gave me hope. You showed me survival was possible. Lena answered every single one. 3 months after the trial ended, Garrett drove Lena back to Montana. Not to the cabin that was gone, burned by Volkov's men and never rebuilt. Instead, they went to the road where they'd first met. Snow still covered the ground, though lighter now, spring approaching. Garrett stopped the truck at the exact spot where he'd found her, collapsed in the storm. "Why are we here?" Lena asked. "Because I have something to ask you, and it needs to happen where everything started." He stepped out of the truck and walked around to open her door. Shadow jumped down first, sniffing the familiar terrain with cautious recognition. Garrett helped Lena down, then walked her to the shoulder of the road, the same spot where she'd nearly died 8 months ago. "I spent 12 years saving strangers," he said. "I told myself it was enough, that the mission was my purpose, that love was a luxury I couldn't afford. Garrett, let me finish." He took her hands. "When I found you in this road, something changed. Not immediately, not dramatically, but somewhere between carrying you through that storm and watching you testify in that courtroom, I realized I'd been running my whole life. From commitment, from connection, from the risk of losing someone again." Lena's eyes glistened. "You taught me that risk is worth taking. That broken pieces can be rebuilt. That survival isn't just about staying alive, it's about finding something worth living for." He reached into his pocket. "I don't have much to offer. A future full of uncertainty. A history full of shadows. A heart that's still learning how to feel." He dropped to one knee. "But everything I have is yours, if you'll have me." The ring was simple. Silver band, small diamond, nothing extravagant. But to Lena, it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "You really want to marry someone who comes with this much baggage?" she whispered. "I want to marry someone who walked through a blizzard rather than give up. Someone who stood in a courtroom and stared down her demons. Someone who makes me believe the future can be better than the past." Shadow nudged Lena's leg tail, wagging furiously. She laughed through her tears. "I think the dog is voting yes." The dog has good judgment. He chose me first. Then we agree on something. Lena pulled him to his feet and kissed him long, deep, full of promise. Yes, she said against his lips. 1,000 times yes. The wedding was small. Harrison's ranch, rebuilt after the attack, served as the venue. Claire officiated. She'd gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. Miguel Torres stood as Garrett's best man. 3 of the women rescued from Derek's operation served as Lena's bridesmaids. Shadow carried the rings in a small pouch around his neck. He performed his duty with solemn dignity, only breaking character when Garrett dropped a treat. The vows were simple. I promise to stand beside you, Garrett said. Through storms and silence, through healing and struggle, for every day I'm given. I promise to trust you, Lena answered, with my heart, with my future, with the broken pieces I'm still putting back together. They exchanged rings under a sky full of stars. And when they kissed, something settled into place, not an ending, but a beginning. After the ceremony, Lena found her way to a quiet spot at the edge of the property. Shadow followed as he always did. You okay? Garrett appeared beside her moments later. More than okay. She leaned into him. I was just thinking about how different everything is. A year ago, I was dying in a blizzard, convinced my life was over. Now you're married to a stubborn Navy SEAL with commitment issues. Now I have a future. An actual future. One I chose. But Garrett wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Any regrets? Only that it took nearly dying to find you. Some things are worth almost dying for, Lena smiled. That sounds like a bad country song. Everything sounds like a bad country song in Montana. She laughed. Really laughed, the sound carrying across the ranch. Harrison appeared on the porch, waving. You two planning to join your own reception, or should we just send cake out there? Coming, Lena called back. She took Garrett's hand. Ready. For what? The rest of our lives. He kissed her forehead. I've been ready since the moment I saw you in that storm. They walked back together, Shadow trotting between them. Behind them, the Montana sky stretched endlessly toward tomorrow. 1 year changed everything. Lena stood at the window of their new home, a small ranch outside Bozeman, purchased with Garrett's savings and her settlement from the lawsuit against Lincoln County. Shadow lay at her feet, his muzzle graying now, but his eyes still sharp, still vigilant. Her hand rested on her stomach. 6 months along. The doctors had warned about complications, her injuries, her trauma, the physical strain of pregnancy on a body that had already survived so much. But Lena had never been good at listening to warnings. The sound of a truck engine made Shadow's ears perk up. Lena's heart quickened. She'd been waiting for this moment for 3 months. The door opened and Garrett walked in. He was thinner than when he'd left, harder around the edges, but when his eyes found hers, something softened. Hey, stranger, she said. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. I'm home. I noticed. She breathed him in dust and sweat, and the indefinable scent of places she'd never see. You're early. Caught an earlier transport. Couldn't wait another 12 hours. Shadow pushed between them, demanding attention. Garrett knelt and scratched behind the dog's ears. You take care of her while I was gone. Shadow's tail wagged furiously. He barely left my side, Lena said. Slept outside the bedroom door every night. Growled at the mailman twice. Good boy. Garrett stood and looked at her. Really looked. His eyes went to her stomach, to the swell that hadn't been there when he left. You're bigger. That's what happens when you grow a human. I meant beautiful. You're more beautiful. Smooth recovery. He laughed, a sound she hadn't heard in 3 months. 3 months of satellite calls and broken connections, and the constant gnawing fear that he wouldn't come back. But he had. He always did. "How was it?" she asked carefully. Garrett's expression flickered. "Hard. Different than before." "Different how?" "I kept thinking about you, about the baby, about coming home." He shook his head. "I've never had that before, something pulling me back. It made the mission harder, and easier." "Easier." "Because I knew what I was fighting for." Lena pulled him toward the couch, making him sit, making him be still for the first time in months. "Tell me." So he told her. Not everything. There were things he could never share, classified operations that would stay buried in his memory forever. But the parts he could tell he gave her freely. The extraction in Yemen. The hostages they'd saved. The teammate they'd lost. Martinez. 26 years old. Wife and a baby daughter. Garrett's voice was rough. He took a bullet that was meant for me, pushed me out of the way and caught it in the throat. Lena took his hand. I held him while he died. Told him his family would be taken care of. Told him he was a hero. Garrett's eyes were distant. He tried to say something at the end. I couldn't hear what. The gunfire was too loud. You did everything you could. Did I? Sometimes I wonder. If I'd been faster. If I'd seen the shooter sooner. Then you'd be dead. And Martinez would be sitting somewhere asking the same questions about you. Garrett was quiet for a long moment. I put in my retirement papers. Lena's breath caught. What? 12 years is enough, more than enough. He looked at her. I've given everything I had to the mission. It's time to give something to us. Are you sure I never asked you to? I know you didn't. That's why I'm sure. He placed his hand over hers on her stomach. I want to be here for the birth, for the first steps, for all of it. I don't want to be a name on a satellite call while my child grows up without me. Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. I was so scared, she admitted. Every day, every night. I kept thinking, what if this is the deployment that doesn't end? What if I'm raising this baby alone? You're not going to be alone. Not anymore. Not ever again. He kissed her, then slow, deep, full of promises that didn't need words. Shadow whined softly as if reminding them he was still present. They laughed through their tears. The next weeks were a whirlwind of adjustments. Garrett, who had spent his entire adult life taking orders and executing missions, found himself lost in the chaos of civilian domesticity. How do you fold these? He held up a tiny onesie, bewildered. Lena laughed. You've disarmed bombs. You can figure out baby clothes. Bombs have logic. This has snaps. Why are there so many snaps? For diaper access. That sounds threatening. Wait until you actually change one. But beneath the humor, Garrett was struggling. Lena saw it in the nights he couldn't sleep, pacing the house like a caged animal. In the way he flinched at unexpected sounds. In the distance that sometimes crept into his eyes. Talk to me, she said one night, finding him on the porch at 3 a.m. Can't sleep. I know. You haven't slept properly since you got back. Garrett stared at the darkness. I keep seeing Martinez. Keep hearing that sound, the bullet hitting him. Keep wondering what he was trying to say. Have you thought about talking to someone, a professional? I've done the VA counseling. It helps, sometimes. But not enough. No. He was quiet for a moment. The problem isn't the memories. It's the absence. For 12 years, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. Every day had structure, purpose. Now, Now you have to find a new purpose. Exactly. Lena sat down beside him, pulling a blanket around both of them. When I lost my leg, I thought my life was over. Everything I'd trained for, everything I'd worked toward, gone. I spent months in that darkness trying to figure out who I was without the army. How did you get out? I didn't. Not alone. I found people who'd survived similar losses, who understood the specific weight of serving and then suddenly not. They taught me that purpose doesn't disappear, it transforms. Garrett looked at her. What transformed your purpose? You're looking at it. She touched her stomach. And you. And this. She gestured at their home, their life. I couldn't be a combat medic anymore, but I could be something else. Something better. Shadow's Shield, she smiled. It's almost ready. We open next month. Shadow's Shield was Lena's dream made real. A non-profit organization that provided trained German shepherds to domestic abuse survivors' protection animals who could help women rebuild their lives after escaping their monsters. She'd spent the year Garrett was deployed preparing fundraising training programs, partnerships with shelters across 3 states. The facility was nearly complete, a converted barn on their property with kennel space for 20 dogs. Show me, Garrett said the next morning. Lena walked him through the facility, explaining each element. The training area where dogs learned protection commands. The living quarters where survivors could stay while bonding with their animals. The therapy room where Claire would provide veterinary care. We've already had 40 applications, Lena said. Women from all over the country. I had to turn some away because we don't have enough dogs yet. How do you choose? We prioritize based on danger level. Women who've escaped but are still being stalked. Women whose abusers have threatened to kill them. Women who have nowhere else to go. Garrett watched her speak, watched the fire in her eyes, the certainty in her voice. You built this, he said quietly, from nothing. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into something that saves lives. I had help. Claire, Miguel, you. I was deployed for most of it. You were still helping. Every time I wanted to quit, I thought about you, about how you never quit no matter how impossible things seemed. She took his hand. You taught me that. Garrett didn't know what to say, so he just held her. The first dog was placed 3 weeks later. Her name was Hope, a 3-year-old German shepherd trained specifically for protection work. Her new owner was Maria, a 23-year-old whose ex-boyfriend had nearly killed her twice before she escaped. Lena conducted the placement ceremony personally. Hope isn't just a pet, she explained to Maria. She's your partner, your protector. She will stand between you and danger for the rest of her life. Maria knelt beside the dog, tears streaming down her face. I haven't felt safe in 2 years, she whispered. I forgot what it felt like. You're safe now. Hope will make sure of that. When Maria left with her new companion, Lena watched through the window until their car disappeared. That's 1, Garrett said, standing beside her. 46 more applications waiting. You'll get there. I know. She wiped her eyes. It's just, every placement matters. Every woman we help is someone who doesn't become a statistic. Someone who gets to have a future. Like you. Like me. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Lena opened it casually, expecting another donation acknowledgement or partnership inquiry. What she found made her blood run cold. I know where you are. I know about the baby. This isn't over. No signature. No return address. But she didn't need either. Garrett. He was at her side in seconds, reading over her shoulder. His expression went from confusion to rage in the space of a heartbeat. Volkov. He's supposed to be in Belarus. How does he? He has people everywhere, always has. Garrett took the letter carefully, already thinking about forensics tracing counterintelligence. When did this arrive? Today's mail. Have you touched anything else from that delivery? No, just this. Garrett pulled out his phone. Martinez, Agent Martinez, not... He stopped, the name catching in his throat. Rodriguez. I need to call Rodriguez. Within an hour, their property was surrounded by FBI agents. The letter was analyzed. The postmark traced. Security protocols implemented. He's testing you, Rodriguez explained. Seeing how you respond, whether you'll run, hide, or fight. I'm not running, Lena said. I know. That's what worries him. What do? We wait, we watch, and we prepare. Rodriguez looked at Garrett. I don't suppose you'd consider taking her somewhere safer. She won't go. No, I didn't think so. Lena's jaw was set. He took 3 years of my life. He's not taking another second. If he wants to come for me, let him come. But I'm not hiding. Not again. Not ever again. Garrett squeezed her hand. Then we make our stand here. 2 weeks passed, then 3. No more letters. No attacks. No sign that Volkov's threat was anything more than psychological warfare. But the tension remained. Garrett increased security around the property, installed cameras, set up perimeter alarms, trained Shadow on enhanced protection protocols. You're turning our home into a fortress, Lena observed one evening. I'm keeping my family safe. At what cost? We can't live like prisoners forever. It's not forever. Just until what he dies, gives up, decides to leave us alone. Lena shook her head. Men like Volkov don't give up. They don't forget. The only way this ends is if someone ends it. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we stop waiting for him to make the next move. We go after him. He's in Belarus, beyond our reach. Is he... Lena pulled out her laptop. I've been researching. Volkov has business interests in 12 countries, shell companies, real estate holdings, financial networks. She opened a file. 2 weeks ago, he registered a new company in Canada, Vancouver. That's within reach. Garrett studied the documents. You want to lure him onto North American soil. I want to end this, one way or another. And if he doesn't take the bait, then we try something else. But I'm done being passive. I'm done letting him control my fear. Garrett was quiet for a long moment. You know this could backfire. Spectacularly. I know. And you want to do it anyway. I want to live. Really live. Not looking over my shoulder every second. Not wondering if today is the day he strikes. Her hand went to her stomach. Our child deserves a mother who isn't paralyzed by fear, who isn't constantly waiting for the worst. Our child deserves a mother who's alive. Then help me make sure I am. Help me end this. Garrett looked at her, this woman who had survived blizzards and bullets and the systematic destruction of her spirit. Who had rebuilt herself from nothing. Who refused to stop fighting even when every logical reason said she should. Okay, he said finally. We do this together. But we do it smart. We do it careful, and we don't take any unnecessary risks. Deal. They shook on it, and began planning the end of Volkov's reign. The operation took 6 weeks to organize. Rodriguez provided FBI support, unofficial, deniable, but essential. Miguel Torres contributed his intelligence expertise. Harrison offered tactical consultation. The plan was simple, in concept complex, in execution. Lena would reach out to Volkov directly. Offer a trade her silence for her safety. A meeting to negotiate terms. Volkov, they knew, wouldn't trust a simple surrender. But he might trust his own arrogance, might believe that a pregnant woman cornered and desperate would finally break. "He'll come," Lena said. "His ego won't let him refuse. And when he does, we'll be ready." The meeting was set for a private airfield outside Vancouver. Neutral territory, international implications, perfect conditions for a trap. Lena arrived first, flanked by agents posing as her security team. Shadow was with her. She'd refused to leave him behind, and the FBI had eventually stopped arguing. Volkov's plane landed at midnight. He emerged looking exactly as she'd imagined: silver hair, expensive suit, the casual confidence of a man who'd never faced consequences for his actions. "Mrs. Stone." His accent was thick, cultured. "You look well. Pregnancy suits you. Let's skip the pleasantries. I'm here to make a deal. So I understand. You want me to leave you alone, in exchange for what? Everything I know about your operation stays buried. The testimony I could give, the evidence I've compiled, the names I've collected, all of it disappears." Volkov smiled. "And why would I trust you to keep that promise? Because I have something to lose now. Something worth more than revenge." Lena touched her stomach. "I want to raise my child in peace. I'm willing to let you walk away if that means my family is safe." Touching. Volkov's smile didn't reach his eyes. "But I have a counteroffer. Which is, you come with me, willingly. Your husband receives your child when it's born, and I receive compensation for the trouble you've caused." Lena's jaw tightened. "That wasn't the deal." "Deals change. You destroyed a network I spent 15 years building, killed my business partners, cost me millions in assets and international relationships." His voice hardened. "Did you really think I came here to negotiate? I came to collect." He signaled, and men emerged from behind his plane. Armed, professional, ready. "Your FBI friends are too far away to help. My people disabled their vehicles 10 minutes ago, and your husband—" Volkov smiled coldly. "He's being dealt with as we speak." Lena's blood went ice cold. "What did you do?" "Insurance, in case you tried something foolish." The world narrowed to a single point of clarity. Garrett was in danger. Her family was in danger. Everything she'd built was about to be destroyed. And then she heard it. A dog's bark, sharp and commanding, cutting through the night. Shadow launched from her side like a missile. He hit the first guard before anyone could react, teeth finding throat, bringing the man down with practiced violence. The second guard turned, weapon raised, and Shadow was already moving a blur of black and tan fury. Chaos erupted. Gunfire, shouts, the sound of helicopters suddenly approaching from multiple directions. Lena dropped to the ground as bullets flew overhead. And then Garrett was there, materializing from the darkness like a ghost weapon in hand, moving with the lethal precision of a man who'd spent his life in combat. "You okay?" he shouted over the noise. "You're alive." "They tried. They failed." He pulled her behind cover. "Rodriguez has the perimeter. Volkov's not getting out of here." The firefight lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, 6 of Volkov's men were dead. 3 more were in custody. The helicopter teams had blocked every exit, and Volkov himself stood alone in the center of the airfield, surrounded by federal agents, his empire finally completely destroyed. He looked at Lena with something that might have been respect. "You planned this, from the beginning. You're not the only one who can set a trap. Impressive. You would have made an excellent asset." "I'm not an asset, I'm a survivor, and you're done." They put him in handcuffs and led him away. Lena watched until he disappeared into an FBI transport. Then her legs gave out. Garrett caught her before she hit the ground. "I've got you," he said. It's over. It's finally over. She clung to him, trembling, feeling the adrenaline drain away and leave nothing but exhaustion. He can't hurt us anymore. He can't hurt anyone anymore. Shadow limped to her side, a gash on his shoulder from the fight. He pressed his head against her hand, as if checking that she was still there. "Good boy," she whispered. "Such a good boy." The three of them stayed like that, as the sun began to rise, broken, bloody, but alive. And free. The baby came 2 months later. Garrett was there for every moment, holding Lena's hand through 18 hours of labor, coaching her breathing, when the pain became unbearable. Crying when the first scream filled the delivery room. A girl. 7 pounds 4 ounces. Perfect. They named her Hope. For Shadow's first placement, Lena explained to Claire, who stood as the unofficial aunt, and because it's what she represents. Hope Stone. Claire smiled. Sounds like a superhero. Maybe she will be. Garrett held his daughter for the first time, with hands that had taken lives and saved them. Hands that had held weapons and wounded soldiers and the woman he loved. Now they held something infinitely more precious. "Hey, little one," he whispered. "I'm your dad, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never know the darkness your mom and I have seen." Hope opened her eyes, gray-green like Lena's, and seemed to study his face. "She knows you," Lena said softly. I think she's already got you wrapped around her finger." Garrett laughed. Probably. Definitely. Shadow, who had been waiting anxiously outside the delivery room, was finally allowed in. He approached the baby with careful reverence, sniffing gently, then settling beside the bed, as if taking up a permanent guard position. "Looks like she has a protector," Claire observed. "She has a family," Lena corrected. "That's more important." 1 year after Hope's birth, a documentary crew arrived at the ranch. The film, commissioned by a victims' advocacy organization, would tell Lena's story from beginning to end. Her service, her abuse, her escape, her triumph. "Are you sure about this?" Garrett asked on the first day of filming. "I'm sure. Our story saved my life. Maybe it can save someone else's." The interviews took 3 days. Lena answered every question honestly, sometimes tearfully, always completely. She talked about Derek, about the abuse, about the night she'd run into the blizzard with nothing but shadow and a desperate prayer. She talked about Garrett, about being found, about learning to trust again. She talked about Shadow's shield, about the 47 women who'd been placed with protection dogs in the past year, about the letters she received daily from survivors who'd found hope because of her example. And she talked about hope herself, about the future, about the world her daughter would inherit, about the responsibility to make it better. The documentary aired 6 months later. It was watched by 12 million people in the first week. Donations to Shadow's shield quadrupled overnight. Applications from survivors increased tenfold. Partnerships with national organizations multiplied, and letters came, thousands of them, from women who'd been afraid to leave, from survivors who'd thought they were alone, from daughters and mothers and sisters who saw themselves in Lena's story. One letter stood out. "Dear Mrs. Stone, I watched your documentary last night. I am sitting in a shelter right now, writing this on borrowed paper with a borrowed pen. My husband doesn't know where I am. Yet. For 3 years I've been telling myself I couldn't leave, that I deserved what he did, that no one would believe me. But then I saw you. I saw what you survived, what you built afterward. Today I'm filing for divorce. Today I'm applying for one of your dogs. Today I'm choosing to live. Thank you for showing me it was possible. Hope. Lena read the letter 3 times. Then she framed it and hung it in her office. A reminder of why every struggle mattered. A testament to what one story could do. Spring came early that year. Lena sat on the porch. Hope in her arms, watching Garrett play with Shadow in the yard. The dog was slower now. 8 years old gray spreading through his black coat, but still devoted, still vigilant. I've been thinking, Garrett said, settling beside her. Dangerous activity. I want to train, with the dogs, help prepare them for placement. Lena looked at him. You want to work for Shadow's shield? I want to work with you, for something that matters. He paused. I spent my whole career learning how to protect people through violence. Maybe it's time I learned a different way. You'd be good at it. You think, the dogs already love you, and you understand trauma. You understand survivors. She smiled. You're one of us. Is that a yes? That's a yes. Hope gurgled, as if adding her approval. That evening after the baby was asleep, and Shadow was snoring by the fireplace, Garrett and Lena stood at the window together. We made it, Lena said softly. Through everything. We actually made it. Was there ever any doubt, constant doubt, every single day? Me too. Garrett put his arm around her. But we're here anyway. Because we had each other. Because we chose each other. Every day. Even when it was hard. Lena leaned into him, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't stopped that night, if you'd just driven past? I couldn't have driven past. Something wouldn't let me. What? Garrett was quiet for a moment. I've spent a lot of time thinking about God, he said slowly. About faith. About whether there's something bigger than us guiding things. And I don't have answers. I'm not sure anyone does. He looked down at her. But I know this, I was supposed to find you. Whatever force, whatever fate, whatever design put me on that road at that exact moment, it wasn't accident. It was purpose. You believe that. I have to. Because the alternative that it was random, meaningless chance doesn't explain how right this feels. How complete. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. Sometimes I pray, she admitted. Not in any formal way. Just talking. To whatever's listening. What do you say? Thank you mostly. For the storm that almost killed me. For the man who saved me. For the second chance I never expected. That's a good prayer. It's the only one I need. They stood together as darkness settled over the mountains. Behind them, their daughter slept peacefully. Their dog guarded faithfully. Their life built from broken pieces and impossible odds held steady. Some miracles don't arrive as thunder or light from the sky. They come quietly. A stranger who stops on a frozen road. A hand extended in darkness. A voice that says simply, "Ride with me." And from that moment, everything changes. Not because the storm ends, but because you no longer face it alone. If this story touched your heart, perhaps you know what it means to be lost. To carry burdens no one sees. To wonder if tomorrow holds anything worth fighting for. Today, may you remember you are not forgotten. Your storm will pass. And somewhere, someone is on their way to find you. Share this story with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. And if you believe in courage and healing and love that survives the impossible, subscribe so we can walk this journey together. God bless you. God keep you safe, and may you never, ever walk alone through the storm.